Welcome to the Board Game Network. This is James. I'm going to be explaining how to play this game called Dominant Species, put out by GMT Games, designed by Chad Jensen. It plays 2 to 6 players and 14 years and up, but it plays in 2 to 4 hours, so it's on the longer side of games. So if you really only play Euro games, hour and a half or something, this may not be the game for you. It's not overly complex. There's a lot going on in it. But it does take a little bit of time to play this game. I've already got it set up. Let me show you what I have. Each player has an animal. So they have, like, here's insects, birds, amphibians, reptiles, arachnids, or mammals. So you get one of those, and you put your initiative marker on the board here in the initiative track, and you put it in reverse food chain order, so the insects will, even though they're at the bottom of the food chain, they get to go first and then up. And so that's the way it starts. You put a tile out here. There's underneath this, it's printed on the board already, your starting tiles, and then also your starting elements that go on top of the tiles. They go on the corners of the tiles, and it even shows you which cubes go on this tile. So there's 2 of the reptile cubes that go on here, which are black, and 1 insect and 1 monkey, mammal, goes on this one. So that's one way of remembering which cubes start there. Another way to remember is, if you look at your display board here, birds need the grain or the flowers here. This is what they need, and this is what the earth provides out here. Okay, so birds are obviously going to want to be around where the grain is. So if you look, there's 2 there, and there's 1 on each adjacent tile. And that's consistent among all of the animals. Insects need grass, amphibians need water, and so you'll notice they have starting printed elements on their sheet. And so that's the setup there. You take your dominant species deck, you remove the Ice Age card, shuffle the deck, deal 5 cards face up there, and you put the Ice Age card on the bottom of the deck. That's going to signal the end of the game when that one gets played. I'll just throw those over there. You're going to take all the rest of the tiles that you didn't put out here. Oh, by the way, the center tile is the water, the sea, and you're going to put a tundra on top of it. It's already been converted to a tundra. The rest of your tundra tiles are here. You're going to take the rest of your different kinds of land tiles here. There's 24, so you're going to put 8 in each stack face down, and then flip the top one up. You are going to take the elements and put the rest of them in your cloth bag. You're going to draw 4 at random, put them on the adaptation track, draw 4 at random, put them on the abundance track, draw 4 at random, put them on the wanderlust track. And the different number of players, depending on how many players you play, you get a different number of cylinders, cones, and species. Your cubes are species. So each cube represents a different species of this kind of animal. So birds have all these different kinds of species of birds. So these are 2 different species of birds. So anywhere in the rules where you see how many species, it's talking about how many cubes. It's not talking about how many different color cubes. It's talking about how many cubes altogether. So in this case, with 6 players out, I started with 3 cylinders and 10 cones. You always have 10 cones. And I have 35 species, I think. You take 1 of your species from that and put it here. You take 4 of your species and put them on the tiles. But again, the number of cylinders, the number of species, that changes based on number of players, so you just want to check your setup for that. And your display here has a great abbreviation of all of your different phases here. Okay, so that's how it gets set up. I put all of the yellows out here, all of the birds, but the other ones I just kind of threw some out. So don't pay attention on the numbers out here. Okay, so each cube is a species. Each of these pre-printed things is what you need, and you can put other elements on here, up to 6. You can never have more than 6. So the birds can have more than this that they would need during the game. So they can spread out to, let's say that they wanted to be over here on the savanna. Well, they could either put a sun or grass or water over here, and then they could actually survive over there. There are 3 different phases in this game. There's the planning phase, the execution phase, and the reset phase. The planning phase is essentially as worker placement is what it is. You take one of your cylinders, you place it over here on one of these eyes that's on this track, and starting with the insect first. So insect is green. Your color of your cubes and stuff is based on this initiative tile. So insects are green. So you take one of your cylinders and say, you know what, I'm going to play here. I'm going to play here. I'm going to play. And you put it on one of the eyes, and then whoever's next goes next. Whoever's next goes next. And you keep going until everybody runs out of cylinders. And then once all the cylinders are done, then your planning phase is over. You go into your execution phase. And the execution phase, you remove the cylinders one at a time, left to right, top to bottom, and you do whatever that track allows you to do. And your action is always optional. So let's say that you had your piece here and you took it off and you looked and you decided, you know what, I really don't want to do what I plan to do because something's changed on the board, I don't want to do it anymore. Or maybe you just want to take it away from somebody else. You do not have to do that action, it's optional. And then you go into reset phase once all of the cylinders are off of here. So I will go in and explain the reset phase and then go back and go into detail on the execution phase because that's the longest phase of the game. The reset phase, what happens is extinction first, and it's got a little brief here. Extinction happens, then survival, then reseed. On extinction, you remove all endangered species to the box. And an endangered species is a species that needs something here, but the Earth does not provide it where their species is at, where their cube is at on that tile. So let's say birds, let's say there was a bird cube over here. Well, birds at this point have to have the grain. There is no grain element here, and therefore he would lose all of his species. And whenever this happens, these species go back to the box. There's only one time when species go back to your gene pool, and that's during glaciation here. When the tundras get put down, then those cubes come off and come back into your gene pool. Any other time that your cubes come off the board, they are out of the game. So you've lost the use of those species. Mammals can save 1 cube. So that's one of the benefits of playing the mammal. When extinction comes up, they can save 1 of their cubes, whichever one they want. Then it goes into survival. And survival is whoever has the most species on tundra tiles. So you look at all the tundra tiles that are out there. There's only 1 now, but eventually there will become more and more and more of these that cover up whatever kind of tiles out here. Whoever has the most species, so the most cubes total among all the tundra tiles, they get this survival card. And if there's a tie, then the card is not given out. And what you do is you score bonuses based on the number of tiles that he has species on. So it's not based on the number of species, it's based on the number of tiles that he has species on. And anytime there's bonus points given, it uses this track here, this table here. So let's say there were 3 tundra tiles that he had cubes on. You come over to quantity 3 and look down, and the victory points is 6, so he would move his marker up to 6. Move it 6 forward. And then this is just kept by that person, and then every turn it is given to another player, a different player, or whoever has the most species out on the tundra. Okay, then we look at, once we get done with these, then we look at all of this stuff over here and we refill it essentially. So the first thing we're going to do is refill the dominance cards. So some of these may have disappeared. You do not discard the rest. You just put new cards out. If you run out, you do not reshuffle. The last card, remember, is your Ice Age card. And so that one will eventually come out on the track and somebody will eventually play it. But there can be empty spaces at the end, near the end of the game. The Wanderlust here, you want to empty off any leftover elements here. Some of them may be gone, some may be there. You're going to take them off, throw them back in the bag. You're going to empty the depletion box of elements. These things end up getting down here. So any in the depletion box, they go back in the bag. Any in the regression box, they're going to go back in the bag. So once you've emptied all those off, then you're going to refill the Wanderlust. So you're going to draw 4 new elements from the bag. Glaciation, right here. You can have these only get taken off one at a time. So any of them over here move 1 space to the left. So let's just say that there was something like that. This guy got to use his during this turn, but those 2 did not. They just stay there, and then so during the reset phase they move 1 space to the left. And so then white, or the mammals, would get to do glaciation this turn, this next turn. Then wasteland, any elements on wasteland goes down to depletion. Any elements in abundance goes down to wasteland. Any elements in adaptation goes down to regression. And they do a great job of putting arrows in there to help you remember, so it's real simple. And then you're going to refill this abundance with 4 new elements. You're going to refill the adaptation with 4 new elements. And that is all there is to the reset phase. That's the end of every turn. You kind of refill all the stuff. You are going to flip up any new tiles here. If there's ones missing, they're going to get a new tile flipped over. But that doesn't happen during the turn. It only happens at the end of the turn. So once one gets taken, then you only have a choice of the other 2. And one of those gets taken, you only have a choice of whatever's left. And then at the end of the turn, during the reset, that's when those get flipped over. Okay, let's go back now and talk about the execution phase, the second phase of the turn where all of this happens. I'll explain to you what each of these steps does. Initiative. This is the order that things happen when you're placing your cylinders down. So whoever's in first place gets to put the first cylinder down. Whoever's in second place puts the second cylinder down. So whoever has declared initiative, what he does is he moves his marker 1 space to the left. So he's swapping his with the person to the left. So mammals are down here at the end. So if he placed this on initiative, he would swap like so. Reverse the order of those 2, and then he actually gets to place this somewhere else on an available space, on an available eye, anywhere on the board that's left. So let's just throw it down here. So adaptation, you select an element and place it on an empty space on your display. So this helps you survive on other tiles, or it makes you better on maybe the tiles you're on. So let's say the birds had a cylinder there. Maybe they wanted more grain, to specialize in grain and have more. Or maybe it wanted to branch out so it could survive on a tile that had meat. Some of these tracks are defensive and some are offensive. This is definitely a defensive one. It helps you survive on tiles, and some of them cross over between offensive and defensive. Some of these tracks can definitely be aggressive, and some are much more passive. So this one allows you to survive because you've got this is your needs, remember, and to say, well, I can need meat, and then so I can move my spaces. I now can have more species. I could have a species in the desert because there's now meat in this one, but there is no grain. The next one is regression. Regression, all animals remove one element disk matching each type disk in the regression box. So on the first turn, nothing's going to be in the regression box. But anything that didn't get taken from the adaptation moves down, remember, at the end of the turn in the reset phase. And so there will be some stuff down there. On the second turn, if you'll notice, there's only 3 eyes here, but there's 4 elements, so there's always going to be at least one of them coming down each turn. So let's say that the birds put a cylinder there, and there was sun and meat in regression. All animals remove one element disk matching each type disk in the regression box. So everybody would have to, from their tracks, remove a sun and a meat, one disk from every different type there. For each AP or action pawn or cylinder or worker that's there, you get to prevent the removal of one element from your board. So let's say birds are there and he had meat down here and meat was here. That allows him to prevent the removal of that meat element. If you'll notice also, the snakes, the reptiles here, have a free worker there every turn, so they can prevent every turn one removal of an element from their board. And these pre-printed elements down here, you can never remove those. Those will always be there, and you never can replace them. You can never put a different kind on top of them. So that's one of the benefits of being a reptile. Let's go into the abundance. Abundance is defensive and offensive. You can choose one element and place it on a vacant corner of an earth tile. So if you had a worker there, you could say, well, you know what, I want to take grass, I want to put grass over here. I want to put grass over, let's see, I've got wheat and meat, you know, so I want to branch over into some other tile over here, so I want to be able to support myself, so I put something that helps me over there on the corner, or on any corner. It can be any of the 6 corners on the tile. So that's abundance. Wasteland, you remove one element to the bag. It says if your action pawn is here, remove one element disk from the wasteland box. So whoever puts an action pawn here can remove, let's say those 3 are down there, can say, well, you know what, I want to remove the sun because maybe I have sun over here on my track and I don't want that one to hurt me, so I can remove that one to the bag before anything happens. And then once this action pawn has removed an element, then you remove all matching elements from tundra tiles to the bag. So remove all matching elements from tundra tiles to the bag. So if there's grass, here's tundra right here. There's grass there, so all grass next to a tundra tile would be removed using whenever those come through wasteland. And if you got 2 or 3 different kinds of elements there, then they all would be removed back to the bag. And so it gets harder to support your animal on tundras. Then on depletion, once the wasteland has been done, and then at the end anything left in wasteland comes down to depletion. If somebody has an action pawn there on depletion, they remove a matching element from any tile. So this is definitely an offensive one, because you're not going to remove elements that support you, you're going to remove elements that support somebody else. So let's say grass once again came down there, you could look around and go, you know what? Insects need grass. I'm gonna come over here to the insects, whatever, the green, and pull a grass off. So all of a sudden these become species that are going to go extinct because they can't support themselves because there's no grass. Glaciation. Remember, there's only one glaciation that happens each turn. So you remove the leftmost AP, goes back to your card. You place a tundra tile adjacent to another tundra tile. It cannot be placed out in the boondocks. It has to be next to another tundra tile. It goes on top of the tile, so let's just say it goes on this one. You remove all elements surrounded by 3 tundra tiles. So if later on, if this wetland became a tundra, then the water would go back to the bag because it would be surrounded by 3. That also means that if you've got an element out on the edge of a tundra, it's not going to be removed ever until you surround it by 3 tundra tiles. You score bonus victory points for adjacent tundra tiles. So whoever placed this, that would be adjacent to 1 tundra tile, so he would get 1 victory point. If there were 2 tundra tiles there, then he would get 3 victory points because of 2 adjacent tundra tiles, and so forth up this track. You remove all but 1 of each animal. So in this case, where those were there, 1 green is going to go back into the box. It's going to be, this is glaciation. So glaciation goes back to the owner's pool. It does not go out of play. But only one of each color is going to be left on the tundra. And remember, this is the only time where removing tiles from the board goes back to the pool so that they can use them again. All other times that you remove them from the board, they go out of play, permanently out of the game. Okay, speciation. Speciation is a defensive play. It allows you to select 1 matching element and place new species on adjacent tiles on the board. So let's say I put my birds down here on the water spot. That allows me to put new cubes next to, you pick a water element on the board somewhere, and then you can put species around that element, whichever one you pick. And if you look here, if it's a tundra, you can put up to 1 species on. If it's mountain or desert, you can put 2. Forest, jungle, or savanna, you can put 3 cubes. Wetland or sea, you can put 4. So let's say I put water, and then I don't think I would want water because I don't have water over here. I would more likely put it on the grain or on the meat. So let's put it on the grain, and let's pick this one here. So tundra, I can only put 1 species on. Jungle, I can put 3. And the other one is forest, and forest I can put 3. So that allows me to put more species back on the board. You'll notice also insects can put 1 cube on anywhere for free. So it doesn't have to, it can be anywhere he wants. Doesn't have to be a specific element next to it. Wanderlust is kind of neutral. It's not really aggressive or defensive. It allows you to take one of the tiles that's face up and put it on the board. It has to be on an empty space, and it has to be adjacent to another tile, at least another tile. You may place an available element on that tile. So let's say I put it there, and these are the available elements. You don't have to, but you can choose one of those and put it on a corner of that tile. You gain bonus victory points based on the number of adjacent tiles. So there's 2 adjacent tiles, so you would get 3 victory points for the player that played that. And in food chain order here, animals can migrate to that new tile as many as they want to from one adjacent space or from any adjacent spaces. So the savanna came down here. If the mammals had some cubes here, some species here, and some species here, they could all, as many as they wanted to, move over. And then reptiles next, birds, and so on down the food chain can migrate to that new tile. Migration, and migration you'll see has a number there, and that's how many species can move. So whoever gets there first, whoever puts their cylinder down first will probably take the biggest number, and then so on. So later on, as people keep playing, they'll get to move fewer and fewer species. So let's say green put it on the 7. So that means when migration happens, they can move as many up to 7 species to one adjacent space. So they can move 1 from here, they can move 1 from here, 1 from here, that's 3. You can't move 1, 1, 1, 1 and count that as 7. They have to all go to an adjacent space, 1 space away, up to 7 cubes 1 space away, or 6, 5, 4, or however many. Now you notice birds have an advantage here. They can move up to 2 spaces instead of 1. So if they had their cylinder on the 3, they could move 3 cubes up to 2 spaces. Competition. Competition is definitely an offensive move. You'll notice that the spiders here, the arachnids, they get 1 every turn. And you must have an active species. Your animal must have a species on that tile that you're doing it to, and an opponent must be on that tile also. And then what you do is you take their cube off and put it back in the box, remove it from play. So it allows you to remove 1 species. Now you'll notice everybody else that places 1 is limited by the tiles that they place on. And there's 3 different tiles on every space. So in other words, this one here has jungle, wetland, and tundra up here. So they get to look around, and as long as they have a species on each of those, they say, well, jungle, and they look around, find a jungle. As long as they have a species on jungle, and then there's an opponent on jungle also, they can remove 1 species, put it back in the box, 1 for wetland, 1 for tundra. And then it goes on down to the right, and so everybody has a different combination of 3 tiles they can remove. Domination. Domination is something that fluctuates around during the game, and that's what these cones are for, is to mark domination. You just put these on and take them off based on who's dominance on a tile, who's in dominance. And the way you calculate that is you look at the elements on your board and compare them to the elements that are provided on each tile. So let's say the birds here, they've got 2 grain here and there's 2 grain here. So you actually multiply them together because there's 2 times 2, so that becomes 4. And then there's one meat here and one meat here, so that's one more. So that would be 5 total on this tile. You do not count your species on the tile at all, except for you do have to have at least one species on that tile for you to be dominant on there. So that would total 5. And then you look around everybody else that's on this. Red has grubs, and he has 2 grubs here. There's 1 grub element, so 2 times 1 is 1. So he's definitely not dominant. White needs meat. There's 2 there, 2 elements times 1 is 2. So that would definitely not be dominant. So yellow would put their cone on there to show that they're dominant on this tile. And so that can be taken off, put on anytime during the game, anytime elements change on the tile, anytime elements change on your board. You just recalculate to see who's dominant and throw a cone on there. So during domination here, you're going to choose a tile out here and you're going to score it. So you score based on the number of species on the board. Whoever has the most species on the board, you'll notice some numbers on each tile. Like the 4 says 532. So whoever has the most species on the tile gets 5 victory points. Whoever has second most gets 3. Whoever has the third most gets 2. Ties are broken in food chain order, so if there's the same number of mammals and reptiles, then mammals will get the higher points and reptiles will get the next one down. And then dominance happens. Whoever has the dominance on the tile, they have to pick one of these cards. They're required to take one and do it. So the score, the points happen based on number of cubes. The dominance card is based on who has dominance on the tile. So this one, like Ice Sheet, says perform an immediate glaciation action. So it would be the same as if you had an action pawn here and you perform the glaciation. And there's ones out here that do things, ones that give you points, just all kinds of different stuff. And then if or whenever the Ice Age card is out here, whoever takes that, you don't have to take it as soon as it goes out, but whenever somebody takes it, that's the end of the game, and you go ahead and finish any other domination action pawns that are out here, but that is the last turn of the game. Whenever you play 2 or 3 players, you really should be playing 6 animals. So if you're playing 2 players, you get 3 animals each. If you're playing 3 players, you get 2 animals each. And then your score is your weakest, or the animal that has the least number of points at the end of the game. So you don't total your animals, you don't win based on who's the farthest, you based on who the weakest, the strongest weak animal you have is compared to the other players. So whenever you get this, draw this Ice Age card, you go ahead and play all the way through domination and play through the reset. And once the Ice Age has happened, once all the domination action pawns have been used, then you go ahead and take off all the domination cones at the end. They don't make any difference to the end. And you go ahead and score all tiles on the earth, just as if you were scoring them individually. They all score over again. And then the player controlling the animal who has the most VP is the winner. And tie is broken by food chain order, so mammal always has the advantage there. So that's the game of dominant species. It's not that challenging. There's a lot of stuff over here. It's basically a worker placement, and you just have to know and understand what the different pieces over here do. And you've got the great summary on your board here that you can always look down, and it gives you a good summary there. So I hope you find this game to be fun. Make sure you put comments down below if you've played this and if you like the game or if you don't like the game. Put your comments down below, and I will keep giving you new rules on how to play new games. Thank you for watching the Board Game Network.